is in the air at Global Voice Broadcasting. Fresh new shows are hitting the airwaves every day. Shows about all the things that matter to you in your life. Music, fashion, celebs, and more. It's all here, and it's getting better every day. Only at Global Voice Broadcasting.
I highly recommend Ms. Hicks. Her books, her CDs are encouraging.
I bought her book, A Hill to Climb. She's a very inspirational speaker.
And I look forward to one day being able to work with her.
Your power lies within you. Let it loose.
Aspiration, inspiration, motivation, edification, determination. These are the keys of life success, brought to you by none other than award-winning author, motivational lecturer, business consultant, and much more, as she gets you aimed to your purpose. And now, ladies and gentlemen, young and elder, from Hollywood to the entire world, here is your host of Aim to Purpose, the radio show, Louise Hicks, along with her co-host, yours truly, Kennon Wesley Mason.
Hello, world. How is everybody? And welcome to our show. We have a special broadcast for you today, being that today is Memorial Day, when we honor our vets who have died serving our country. And we have two very special guests for you today that have been on the show before. And I am Louise Hicks, your host.
And I am your co-host, Kennon Mason. And as always, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone listening and watching Aim to Purpose, the radio show, as we bring you a special Memorial Day weekend edition called Remembering Those Who Gave All, Saving
You have reached
Those.
the maximum time allowed to make.
Saving those, as we have a glitch there. So I'll start over. Remembering those who gave all, saving those who survived. A conversation with Jim Dolan and Stan White. And we look forward to having them back on the show, as we did have them on for our special Veterans Day edition of Aim to Purpose. So it's going to be a great conversation to continue where we left off, if anything.
Oh, yes, because we, on that special broadcast back in November, Veterans Day, we talked about post-traumatic stress disorder, helping veterans knowing the signs and the next steps. So here we are, and today we want to wish everybody a happy Memorial Day, and we are going to talk about the next steps. And also, with this being almost at the last day of the month, but we do have one more day in May. This is May 30th, so we have one more day. And it is also National Mental Health Month, which it's a good time to talk about the subject today, which is, as Ken has mentioned, remembering those who gave all, saving those who survived. And our conversation with our guests, Jim Dolan and Stan White, who were excellent guests in providing us a lot of information, particularly about the 22 soldiers who committed suicide daily, and Stan White, who provided us information about his son, who we will also be commemorating for Memorial Day, because his son did pass away, and he can share more about that with us when they come on air. So with that being said, unless Ken has something else, we're going to take a commercial break, and then we're going to come back and introduce you to our special guest.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that we get to talk about how we can get back to mental health versus constantly talking about mental illness. We have to find solutions. So we won't have to have this conversation for an eternity. There are ways to heal yourself from what's called post-traumatic stress disorder, from veterans that have come back home from seeing all of the things that they get to see during their time in the military. and they're not the most pleasant of experiences, and they get to come back home and try to function, if you will, back into society. And it's a challenge. Yes. It's a great challenge. So we'll be coming back with our special guests, Jim Dolan and Stan White. It's Aim to Purpose, the radio show, remembering those who gave all, saving those who survived. It's Aim to Purpose, the radio show, and don't you go nowhere.
Well,
hello, world. On behalf of everyone at Aim to Purpose, the radio show, we want to thank you, the viewing and listening audience around the world, for tuning in each and every week to experience the best in the internet radio hemisphere, listen to the best in life-altering information, and feel the energy of each guest as they share personal stories and in-depth knowledge on a wide variety of topics intended to capture your interest and keep your attention span at an all-time high. Aim to Purpose, the radio show, is about enlightenment, opening the mind to new ideas, and challenging the status quo. It's also about elevation, success, honesty, and universal truth as we enjoy free-flowing conversation in a fun-filled environment. So tell everyone you know to tune in each week and plug into the A2P universe. Your power lies within you, so let it loose. This is Kennon Mason, co-host of Aim to Purpose, the radio show.
Once again, this is Louise Hicks, your host of Aim to Purpose radio show, along with my son, Kennon Wesley Mason, and my co-host. And today, as we mentioned at the top of the hour, we are remembering those who gave all, and we are saving those who survived. That is our topic for today, as we remember those who died serving our country in the armed forces, this being Memorial Day. So with that being said, we are going to go ahead and introduce our special guest.
Yes, Jim Dolan is the executive director of the Laurus Foundation and the co-founder of the Healer Warrior Initiative. He serves on the board of scientific and professional advisors for the Institute for Traumatic Stress. He is also the co-chair of the Illinois Joining Forces Behavioral Health Working Group's Complementary and Alternative Medicine Subcommittee. The Laurus Foundation began in 2008 with the mission to advance the lives of individuals with disabilities, with a focus on finding modalities that center on the body's remarkable ability to heal itself. Jim has been working with Dr. Frank Urasek for the past 4 years on the Healer Warrior Initiative, a self-health care training program teaching veterans to take better care of themselves, their families, and their fellow veterans. Stan White is a retired high school principal. He is the father of Marine Corporal Andrew White, who was a healthy 23-year-old gung-ho Marine returning from a 9-month tour in Iraq, who, like so many of his brothers in arms, suffering from the seemingly normal stresses of war, insomnia, nightmares, and restlessness. The young corporal turned to the military's mental health system for help. Within a few short months, White became unrecognizable to his family. 11 months after beginning his first cocktail of mind-altering drugs, he died in his sleep from what the medical examiner ruled a, quote, accidental overdose of medication, end quote. Since taking his first multi-drug cocktail to the date of his death, White had been prescribed no less than 19 different drugs, with many at ever-increasing dosages, including antidepressants, antipsychotics, anti-anxiety, painkillers, and antibiotics. The prescribed drugs methadone, oxycodone, Paxil, and Seroquel were found in his system at the time of death. Stan and his wife Shirley blamed the, quote, lethal cocktail of psychiatric drugs for the death of their son. Quote, "We don't think they should be given to troops in the field," Stan White said. it's worth asking whether they should be given to anybody, anytime, civilian or military, end quote. The White family are advocating more alternatives for soldiers and have testified before the United States Food and Drug Administration. So let's welcome back to Aim to Purpose, the radio show. Big welcome and round of applause for Stan White and Jim Dolan.
Hello, Stan, and hello, Jim. How are you both? Hello.
Good, Louise, how are you? Hi, Kennon.
How are you?
We are wonderful.
Well, thank you.
And welcome back to this special Memorial Day broadcast as we remember
You have reached the maximum
Andrew
time permitted for recording your message.
White,
if you
the
are
son
satisfied
of
with your
Stan,
message, press
along
1
with
to listen
all
to your
the
message.
other,
Press 2
and
to
we have some type of little glitch, but it went away. And as we remember all the other veterans who died, as I mentioned, Andrew White, the son of Stan, who was only, I believe, was he 22 or 23, Stan? Hello, can you hear me, Stan?
Yes, I had to call in on my cell phone. The other end was just quit working.
Oh, okay. Well, that's okay.
As long as we got you.
We got you. And I was saying that today we remember not only Andrew, your son, who I believe he was 22 or 23 when he died, along with all of the other vets.
Yes, 23. That's correct.
23, okay. And
Yes.
we are so happy to have you and Jim back to continue our discussion. As we mentioned at the top of the hour, you all were here for Veterans Day and gave us so much information because a lot of people didn't know what was going on about 22 soldiers dying per day and all of the situations and disorders going on with the vets, and it has been traumatic. So we are so glad that you have come to help us remember those this Memorial Day, and we'd like to wish you both a happy Memorial Day along with the rest of the world. So with that being said,
For clarity's sake, do we have both gentlemen on? Do we have Jim and Stan on the phone?
are you there, Jim?
I'm here, yes.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
perfect.
Just
Perfect.
wanted to make sure. Okay, but anyhow, let's go ahead and share some information. I know you guys have lots to share today with our Memorial Day listeners. And let me just share this quickly. In case any of you missed the Veterans Day show, you can always see it on our YouTube channel, which is Aim to Purpose Radio. All of our shows are archived, and that was an excellent broadcast where Jim and Stan shared lots of information. And the title of that one, the topic was Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder, helping veterans knowing the signs and next steps. So you can go, and we are going to talk about next steps today. So tell us about what have both of you been doing since our last conversation in terms of your organization, Jim, and you, Stan. What have both of you been doing?
And I'll let you go ahead.
I've been doing speaking and traveling and working with veterans groups, trying to get the word. And I've been working mainly with a group called Operation Tahiti, which is a camp that is free for veterans, and they come in. They show the veterans how they can treat PTSD without medication. There's peer counseling and equine therapy and rope therapy, and it's a wonderful program.
Oh, great, great. And what was the name of that organization again, Stan?
Operation Tahiti.
Okay, okay.
And, I think I sent it to you, the post on the website. It's the Melwood Corporation sponsors
yes.
it, melwood.com.
Yes, right. Yeah, and we'll give some more information at the end of the show about the different organizations that are out there to help. And what about you, Jim?
Well, Louise, one of the main things that I've been doing along with the folks from Illinois joining forces, is letting veterans and health practitioners know about a program called Veterans Choice. And it's been around for a little bit. It's had some struggles getting going, but it began with Congress passing the Veterans Choice and Accountability Act of 2014. And basically what it says is that if a veteran cannot get the services that they're looking for at the VA because they're simply not offered, things like chiropractic care, acupuncture, and so forth, or if they can't be served within 30 days, or if they live beyond the 40-mile marker. So those are the three criteria. The services aren't offered, they can't be provided within the 30 days, or that the veteran has to travel more than 40 miles. They have the right to go into their community and seek out those services, so they can get an acupuncturist and chiropractic care and so forth, and they can do that, and the VA will pay for those services. So it's called Veterans Choice, and the reason that we're enthusiastic about it and are telling more and more people about it is that we believe that it's one way for veterans and their family members to get the kind of care that they need to avoid what happened with Andrew, Stan's son, where the first thing they did was put him on a bunch of medications. So by getting the kind of care, having choices within the community, we believe that veterans will not only get better care, but they'll have a say in the type of care that they get.
Yes, and that is so vital and important, and I'm so happy to hear that Congress has finally done something to help the veterans, because too many veterans were committing suicide, is committing suicide, and the Veterans Choices Accountability Act. And, you know, the thing that you mentioned, I was so happy to hear you mention chiropractic treatment, acupuncture, and all of these alternative methods of treating, modalities of treating patients, as opposed to drugging them to death, because that is so sad. And we had the picture up here, and it had Stan in it, and it has a picture of his son in his hand, Andrew, with his uniform on. And it's so sad that it's good that we are remembering those soldiers. However, it's sad in the sense that how many of them died when it could have been prevented had we had doctors and legislators and other people to care for the people that serve our country and help to keep us safe, as opposed to serving themselves, because we know many of them are self-serving.
Well, and you would think that the veterans would get the best care, being that they did serve our country. You would think that they would get, it would be automatic for them to get acupuncture, the most natural things to get their bodies back to what it was before they got into the military. I think it's really amazing that the allopathic route is the standard. We see that it virtually doesn't work for most veterans. We see, like my mom just mentioned, many of them are on so many psychotropic drugs. They're homeless. They have nowhere to go, and they find nothing but hopelessness. But it's up to people like us doing shows like this, and people like Jim and Stan that are on the front line doing something to do their part to help, because the government here in the United States has done very little, and it's up to us to have them put their have them hold their feet to the fire.
And that's really good. And I know you said it doesn't work for the veterans, but really these medication and these drugs, they really don't work for anybody. They just don't work. And drugs have their place. I'm not advocating stop using drugs at all, but they put you on drugs and they're supporting nobody but the pharmaceutical company and the drug manufacturers. So speaking of support, I know you guys have dealt with different support groups and so forth in helping the vets. Share some of your experiences that you've had with your support groups. And that can go to either one of you.
Are you asking me or are you asking Jim?
Both of you. You either one, and both of you can respond, because I know both of you have been doing a lot with support groups.
Yes, I work with mainly three groups. One's called Warfighter Sports, and the other one is Operation Tahitu, which is one I work the most with. And they use peer counseling, professional counseling, group dynamics, and it's a week-long camp. They're away from everything else. It's an isolated rural part of Maryland, and it's very, very, very successful. And they bring counselors in to teach them how to get off of the medication slowly, so that they don't stop immediately and become suicidal. And it's a wonderful program, and highly recommend. It's free. They even pay transportation for there. They have several grants, and it's a wonderful program. The Warfighter Sports program is one that they include outdoor activities and peer counseling. Gathering of Mountain Eagles is the one that I work with in the winter at my ski area, and they incorporate skiing. So I don't really think it matters what type of activity. It's getting veterans that have a common problem, which is PTSD, and letting them work with each other and find ways to work it out, and also involving families. I think it's very important to involve families in those situations if possible.
And that is so true, Stan. You are right. Families are important. And what you're doing with these support groups, it really is helping a lot, because what you're doing is saving the lives of so many of our veterans with these programs that you have. So what about you, Jim? What kind of support, peer groups and so forth that you've been helping with, and give us a little bit of information about your support groups?
Well, I'll tell you, Stan said something very important. He said that he didn't believe that it really mattered what the activity was, as long as they were together in a peer support environment. And he's absolutely right. It's not the pills, it's not even the therapy or the methodology or the modality. The thing that has worked throughout the centuries has always been peer support. It's based on the principle of shared experiences, and it works in all areas of life. It's the power of empathy and compassion that's available only to those who have been there. So we incorporate it into everything we do. In fact, we won't treat a veteran unless he has a battle buddy, and obviously we'll do our best to line them up and to put them with a battle buddy, so that they're not left to do this on their own. And we always include the family. So Stan's other point about making sure that the family is included is absolutely essential. But peer support has always been and remains the very best method of providing people with the care they need whenever they've been through a traumatic experience. And as I said earlier, it doesn't matter what the experience is. It works for civilians, and it works for the military. If somebody has been the victim of an assault, a robbery, a home break-in, sexual assault, their best support structure is working with people who have survived those things and come out on the other end with some healing, and those people are essential to the healing process. One of the things I think that we should really emphasize, and I know Stan will attest to this, is that the military and the VA needs to get back to what we refer to as first alternatives. To do those things that cause no harm, because you can always escalate. You can always turn to drugs, or you can always turn to surgery. If somebody is injured, you don't automatically take them into surgery and perform an amputation. You first stabilize them, you stabilize the limb or the wound, and then you do what's necessary to begin rehabilitation.
Right.
So we're big advocates for the principle of first alternatives. And the first thing that we do is make sure that veterans are connected with other veterans and other veteran family members.
And that is so important because, from what I've heard, if you don't structure everything around the family, that can create more harm than good, because that's that glue or that cohesiveness that really holds that family together, because that vet is really struggling, and who wouldn't if you've been in combat and war? Who wouldn't struggle just for survival? So it's really important. And what you talked about when you said about stabilizing and first alternatives, and the fact that you've found alternatives, and that is so true. And I know about those alternatives because of being sick, not in nothing in comparison to what these veterans go through, but I went through a trauma. And I know chiropractic treatment, acupuncture, those were the best treatments because you're getting something natural that's not causing all of these effects in your body. And to stabilize it, I know that is a great point that you made about stabilizing. You just don't go right at it. I can attest to that because of when my son, not Kennon here, but my other son that was diagnosed with cancer at 14, they had to do some stabilization before they could do surgery on the limb that he had the cancer in. So it's really important what you're saying about stabilizing and not just throwing them into the drugs. Now, what about the other aspect of it? We know that this is National Mental Health Month, and we talk about the injury, how we treat. How do you distinguish, and we can start with you, Jim, on this one, the war wound and the wound that can heal, particularly in reference to mental health and the war trauma and all the stress that these veterans go through?
Well, first of all, the thing I think that is most important is to remember that none of this is new. War trauma, combat stress, battle fatigue, shell shock, all the things that it's been called over the centuries has been with us for centuries. It's been with us since the beginning of time. And what we've decided to do is, rather than look for the next best pill or the next best remedy, is to go back and make sure that we look to see what other societies, other cultures, other civilizations did to welcome back their warriors. And they didn't label them as mentally ill. Kennon said at the very beginning it would be good if we could move from talking about mental illness to mental health or mental wellness. And wellness is the key. If we keep talking about PTSD, post-traumatic stress, as a disorder, and the mental health community is really they're on a campaign to destigmatize mental illness. They want the nation, they want people in the community to no longer stigmatize those with a mental illness. Well, I've got a great idea for them. Simply stop calling it a mental illness.
That's right. That's right.
Absolutely.
Nobody wants to be known as being nuts. Nobody wants to be called crazy. Nobody wants to be thought of as being mentally ill. So we put all of this under one big category called human suffering. And people suffer all the time. They go through trauma, and they'll pass through trauma. And they pass through trauma better if they have peer support, if they have people who have also been traumatized who can help walk them through this path to healing. So when it comes to combat stress, it simply does not follow even the pathology for a mental illness. You don't take a healthy 21 or 22-year-old young man who's dedicated, who's well-trained, intelligent, articulate, caring, put them in combat, and then 12 to 18 months later they develop a mental illness. It doesn't follow the pathology.
That's right.
What they have experienced is trauma, and people can pass through trauma if you allow them to process it naturally.
That's right. That's right.
Right.
Go ahead, Stan.
Post-traumatic stress is a natural reaction to a horrific event. That's the best definition for it. And there's maybe it's not the right time to say this, but there's an excellent book out there. It's written by a ex-Army officer from California, practices in California, Dr. Bart Billings, Invisible Scars. And he is covering everything that we have talked about already, plus a lot more, giving a history of how other cultures have dealt with it, the dangers of drugs, and alternatives to, besides drugs, to treat PTSD. You can go on Amazon and get it. It is wonderful. I've met Dr. Billings numerous times. We converse almost on a monthly basis.
Oh, okay.
And,
what specialty is he, Stan? Dr. Billing, what specialty? Is he a psychiatrist or medical?
He's a psychologist. Dr. Billings is a psychologist.
Okay.
And he has, once a year, he has a combat stress conference. I believe it's in San Francisco, but I'm not sure. Somewhere in California.
Okay.
But you can Google him and or his book. You can get the book from Amazon. I have a copy of it, and it's. I'm not promoting books. I'm promoting something that helps people.
I will certainly be getting the book. I love to read.
It's the best book I've ever read about explaining what it is, what its signs and symptoms are, and how you treat it properly.
Okay. And maybe we can get him on the show. Since you know him, maybe we can get him on to talk about some of these things.
He will get on, absolutely.
Oh, great, great.
I can send you the contact information. I can email it to you when we get off the air.
That would be great, because I would love to have him on, and I will get his book, because I love to read.
Yeah, and that name, the name sounds familiar. When we had on, the president of the CCHR, Bruce Wiseman, I think a part of his book had an excerpt with one of
Dr. Billings'
quotes, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so, because that name does sound familiar.
Yeah. Yes.
Kennon, you're exactly right. Bart Billings was in the movie The Hidden Enemy that CCHR produced.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go.
Hidden Enemy.
Stan was in fact, all three of us, Stan, myself, and Dr. Billings, are in that movie. It's called The Hidden Enemy.
Yes, actually, we featured that documentary when Bruce
sure
Wiseman was on our show.
Yes, we did. And I've seen it. I have the documentary. So I would suggest that everybody go out and get that documentary, Hidden Enemy.
That's right.
Because
it's a great documentary.
Great. It's very dynamic and very informative.
And I can't agree any more with what Stan just said about the book, Invisible Scars. And so it's worth taking a second just to let your listeners know how they can get it. Stan mentioned Amazon, but you can also go to Bart, P as in Peter, Billings, bartpbillings.com. BART, initial P, BILLINGS.com. And Dr. Billings has been a leader in this since the 1970s, a Vietnam veteran, psychologist, as Stan mentioned, and he as Stan also mentioned, hosts the longest continuous conference, international conference on combat stress.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a guy who not only has been there, done that, but knows what he's talking about when it comes to how to treat combat stress. In fact, the title of the book, Invisible Scars, the subtitle is How to Treat Combat Stress and PTSD Without Medication.
Mm-hmm.
And,
wow. That would be awesome to get him on. Maybe we can have him on for our Veterans Day
yeah.
program. I will definitely get the book. And what we're going to do, we need to take a break. And I love what you said also about mental wellness, how we should focus on that. And both of you have brought up some very vital points. And thank you, Stan, for sharing that book by Dr. Bart Billings, and you, Jim, for giving us the website. Other than Amazon, you can go to the website, bartpbillings.com, and get the book as well. And what I want, after we take a break, I want to come back and I want to talk to both of you about the marijuana issue with the vets, because I had read something and I saw a documentary. Oh, Ken said he was going to ask about that.
That's
too.
what I was doing all this stuff here because I wanted to ask them about that when we come back. But you go ahead.
Yeah, because I saw it and Ken saw it. In fact, Ken pointed it out to me. He said, Mom, you need to watch this documentary about the veterans marching on Washington about the marijuana, how it has helped them as opposed to all of these drugs. So when we come back, I want you guys to talk a little bit about that if you're familiar with what their march is all about and so forth. But let us take a break and then we'll be right back.
Yes, it's Aim to Purpose, the radio show, remembering those who gave all, saving those who survived. It's a conversation with Jim Dolan and Stan White. Don't you go nowhere. This edition of Aim to Purpose, the radio show, is brought to you by L. Hicks Consulting Services. When you want the best in business coaching, life coaching, or perhaps your organization, business, or company is in need of a dynamic speaker for an upcoming workshop or seminar, contact Louise Hicks for L. Hicks Consulting Services at 1-562-310-1495. From anywhere around the world, that's 1-562-310-1495. For more information about Louise Hicks and her consulting services, visit her website at www.louisehicks.biz. Again, that's www.louisehicks.biz. Or call 1-562-310-1495. L. Hicks Consulting Services, where professionalism is top priority.
Hello again, world, and welcome back. We are celebrating this Memorial Day with former friends, our friends of Aim to Purpose who have been on the show before, Stan White and Jim Dolan, and we are talking about remembering those who gave all, the vets who died in helping to secure our country and saving those who survived. And this conversation has been going very well. We are thankful that they were able to come back and share their information with us. And when we left off, we were talking about, I don't recall the name of this documentary, but maybe Ken does.
Yes, I have the documentary was actually brought to my attention. It's a series. It's a documentary series called Weediquette, as opposed to etiquette. It's like weed etiquette put together in one word. And this particular episode was called Stoned Vets, and it talked to veterans on both sides, veterans that were on multiple medications and were just really fragile in their spirit. Like Jim and Stan have talked about, the support group is so important because a lot of these vets, that's what they needed when they come back, because when they're out in the field 10,000 miles away, they have no support group as far as family is concerned. all they have are their comrades to turn to, but they can't give them that emotional support. This particular documentary interviewed many veterans that said that when all psychotropic drugs have failed, they turned to cannabis and had a complete 180 turnaround with their physical health and their psychological health. So either of you, Jim or Stan, Jim first, what is your opinion on having cannabis as an alternative for healing post-traumatic stress disorder in conjunction with chiropractic and acupuncture as what's called first alternatives?
Jim, did you hear?
Jim and Stan, are we there?
Are you there?
Okay, we have a glitch.
Hello.
Okay, we're getting them back on.
Okay, I guess we lost them during the break, so we're getting them back on.
We're getting them back on.
Okay.
But I mean, this particular subject is something that you rarely get to hear about in the mainstream of cannabis being an alternative, along with chiropractic and acupuncture, which you can testify.
I can testify to that because I had it. I had an illness through my job, and fortunately for me, I had a doctor that believed in integrative alternative medicines. He sent me to acupuncture. He sent me to chiropractic treatment. I also had water therapy, which these are huge alternatives to taking drugs. And at one time, I was on 7 different drugs, and I told my doctor no more because those drugs had so many effects upon me until I just refused to take them anymore. And I took my health into my own hands and started researching and realizing that no more. Those 7 drugs were making me sicker than I was. And once I started getting the acupuncture, chiropractic treatment, water therapy, I started feeling better. And guess what the doctor said? Those are feel-good medicines.
Right. Do we have Jim and Stan? Are you back on the line?
Yes, I'm back on.
Okay,
Great,
perfect.
great.
I don't know if you heard my kind of a long-winded question about the issue of cannabis being one of the alternatives, because we were watching a documentary that was turned on to me called Weedicate. It's about weed etiquette, and it's a series of short documentaries about all the uses of cannabis. And this particular episode was called Stoned Vets, how veterans were interviewed after they come home from combat, and some of the veterans had no hope. They were down and out, had very little support from family. Some had children that they weren't able to see or visit because of their conditions, were loaded up with many different psychotropic drugs, and were just emotionally taxed. Now, on the flip side, you had many veterans that when all other psychotropic or other pills failed, they turned to cannabis as an alternative, and their physical health and mental clarity became tenfold, 100 times better. So what is your opinion of cannabis being what's called a first alternative or natural alternative in conjunction with chiropractic and acupuncture? Should it be presented as an option to the veterans?
And also, just before you speak, Jim, we'll have you to address that first. I saw the documentary as well, and it was very informative for me. And I all the vets that were in it and speaking, I was amazed.
Yes.
So go ahead,
and they
Jim.
even went to Washington with this.
Oh yeah,
as well.
They had a march on Washington and was throwing away the pills and telling Washington D.C. what their needs were. So go ahead, Jim.
Well, I've had an opportunity to sit down with one of the few researchers who has access to the military and the VA, who's in the midst of a federally funded study to see exactly what type of marijuana can be used in a clinical setting. But there's no question that there's a lot of promise. Some of the pushback is that guys and gals are seeking, they're looking for a high, and so there's a lot of pushback from people who aren't very well educated as to how the marijuana that is used in these studies is grown. The active ingredient in marijuana, tetrahydrocannabinol, or THC.
That's right.
Is the thing that gets you high, and there are so many different ways to alter the concentration of THC to limit the amount of intoxication, if you will, that occurs when you either ingest or smoke this type of marijuana. So, but it has been working for people with cancer who are on chemo to be able to keep from vomiting, to give them some appetite so that they can maintain their strength. So we're big advocates for continuing the studies and to give veterans the choice to pursue this, because it is far less dangerous, far less addicting, far less toxic than any of the drugs that Stan's son Andrew was given, and the side effects are minimal compared to the side effects of the psychotropic drugs. So
that's right.
Just based on that alone, comparing those drugs to marijuana, veterans, they just know better. They're not out there trying to get a high.
Right.
Although that does happen, but it's not the majority. The majority of these guys are just looking for either some relief from the pain or the anguish that they're going through. They're not looking to get a high. They just want to be able to get through the day without all of the side effects.
That's right.
Looking for mental wellness, as you said. And as Stan, you want to address that about the cannabis?
Yeah, I was watching a couple of days ago. I don't remember. It was one of the mainstream networks, and they had a 5-minute or so episode about cannabis, and it was in ladies in California, and they were in Mays. They were 70s and grew up in the 60s, and when marijuana at that time was prevalent, and they were resistant to trying it for pain. And once she tried it, in fact, she was using the form of liquid form, drops, and she completely, turned from a person who was against it to being a promoter of this, and used it just like you would an Advil or whatever, take it when you need it. And that was for pain alone, not much less the other properties. So I definitely think the research is there to show that it is helpful, and we need to explore that more to see what avenues that we can use to use it as an alternative. Like I said before, no one thing is going to help. There's many, many different methods you can use. You try what helps, and let's do it if it's not drugs. If it's not prescription drugs is what we've been using. That's what I advocate.
I totally agree.
I agree.
What you're using is not working.
Right. And I agree, because look at what happened to your son, Andrew, when you shared that back in November with us. I mean, that was it was a heartfelt story what happened to your son on all of these different psychotropic drugs. And like, I think it was you that said this, Stan, about the what post-traumatic stress disorder is and the trauma that these vets suffer. And doctors, psychiatrists particularly, don't want to get to the cause of it or the root cause. All psychiatrists, many of them, not all of them, because there are a few good ones out here that aren't ready to just shoot you up with a bunch of drugs. They want to get to the root cause and help you, because naturally you're going to be upset. It's just like the everyday ordinary people. When we go through traumas, we get upset too. And if you go to a psychiatrist, 90% of them, probably the first thing they want to do is give you a drug, because they got a label for almost everything. And those labels mean nothing, because they diagnose and they cure nothing. They don't have any type of measure to give you any type of disease. What they do is make them up. And then they make them up and they give us drugs. And they do the same thing for the military people. They do it to all of us, and that's unfortunate. So
yeah, there's some out there that are proactive in our cause. Dr. Peter Bregan is world known to be against medicating troops for PTSD. He's a psychiatrist. Ithaca, New York, has written many books.
Now, he was in Hidden Enemy also, right? Excuse me for a sec. Wasn't he in Hidden Enemy also, Dr.
Yes,
Peter Bregan? Because I remember him. Yeah, psychiatrist, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, his book, one of his books that I would recommend is Medication Madness, and it gives you, case studies of terrible things that happen to people that are taking mind-altering drugs. And he's an expert in his field. And of course, the pharmaceutical firms, they don't want to listen to him, because it's cutting into their profits if you find other ways to treat. And he wants to go back to the old method. But when I was a child, you went to a psychiatrist and you lay down on the couch or sit in the chair and you talk to them, and it's what psychologists do today. Mm-hmm. And that's what we call professional counseling.
Right.
Yeah, that's an avenue. That's a tool also, as well as peer counseling.
Oh yeah.
It's professional counseling.
It's really ridiculous. Like Jim mentioned about cancer. I was reading something where years ago, people that had cancer, it might have been $10,000 a year, I believe, or something, if that much. Now it's $10,000 a month. So these pharmaceutical and drug industries are criminal as far as I'm concerned. They need to throw them in prison, the ones that are out here advocating and killing people, because that's what they're doing. They are pushing these psychotropic drugs that have all of these effects, and people have gotten violent. A lot of these mass murderings and all of this have come from the psychotropic drugs.
Yeah.
So it's so sad, but go ahead, Ken. I think you wanted to say something.
No, I mean, it is sad that, we do have mass murderings that take place, and virtually all of them have psychotropic drug ties, whether it's Fort Hood or Columbine or you name it, all of them pretty much come with the same result. The Batman shooter, all of these different scenarios that we see on 24-hour news, and they all come back to the psychotropic drugs. And then when they go to commercial break, they're telling you to tell your doctor to get the pharmaceutical drugs as well. So it's an ongoing cycle with military and the average civilian.
It's sad. It's really sick, and it's sad. But we are so happy to have people like you and Jim, you and Stan working for this cause to help our veterans. And we're remembering fewer dying as a result of people like you, and we're uplifting many families, holding families together, because this can pull families apart. So it can, well, Stan, you can elaborate a little bit on this one first, how these drugs affect families and the war, the trauma that it has upon families and divorce, and because we have a few minutes left, so if you could address that.
Yeah, I couldn't quite understand what you were asking because I'd be breaking up.
Oh, I was asking about the families and support.
Families, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and you, Jim, about the families. I was saying how this trauma and the upset of the veterans caused their families break up, and what you guys are doing, you're bringing these families together in supporting saving families and marriages.
Yeah, I think it's very important for the families to read all they can about post-traumatic stress, and you know, some of the books that the literature's out there, so they understand. You know, I tell families all the time when their spouse or father or child lashes out at them, they're not lashing out at them. They're lashing out at what's bothering them. It's not about you. It's about what happened to me.
Absolutely.
And I think once they understand that, then they can start dealing with it. That's advice I give to families: is do your research, read books like Dr. Billinger's book, or some of the books by Dr. Peter Bregan. Those are help me understand. If I had known what I know now, it's one of the guilts I feel with.
Mm-hmm.
My son would be alive today.
Mm-hmm.
That's a guilt that I carry because I did not educate myself when he was going through this.
Yeah.
And, you know, I would die with that burden on me because I didn't know.
That's something that we don't
my
know.
mission is to try to keep other people from doing that, other families.
Right, and that's so important what you just said. Educate yourself. Get these books, and we're going to have some. Give us the sources of resources that veterans can go, and then we'll have final thoughts. I know you guys have a list of various resources and alternative programs. Give us those lists, and then we'll have a final thought from both you and Jim. Who has the list? Is it Jim that has a list of these resources, or both of you? And I know you had mentioned Melwood.
Yes, Operation Tahiti, Millwood. If you Google Millwood Corporation, MELWOD, they have a link to Operation Tahiti, TOHIDU, and the Warfighter Sports, Operation. I mentioned Operation Tahiti.
Yeah, Warfighter Sport, Gathering of Mountain
Therapy.
Warriors.
Equine Therapy.
Okay. Equine Therapy. That's EQUINE.
Yeah, horses. Yeah, working with horses.
Right.
Service dogs. There's all kinds of programs. Vital Warrior is one on the West Coast where you're located.
Okay.
Cal Vega is also in the movie we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And
Hidden Enemy.
Yes,
And you had
Hidden Enemy, correct.
Right. You had a few others. The Gathering of Mountain Warriors, the Guitars for Vets.
Yeah.
Project Healing Waters.
Vital Warrior.
And Vital Warrior.
Vital Unlimited. I work with that also. And like I said before, it's just the activity draws them there.
Mm-hmm.
The activity is not what helps them. It's the drawing of their peers there, and they talk about and what's working for them. So the activity, whether it's horses, whether it's dogs, whether it's fishing, whether it's rock climbing, riding bikes. I know President Bush has brings the Wounded Warriors into his ranch every year, and they ride bikes, and that's not what helps them. It's not the bikes, it's not the fishing, it's the camaraderie.
Right, that support, that peer support. Right, that peer support. That is great. So we have a list of various projects, and you mentioned one here on the West Coast. What was that one on the West Coast again in California?
Vital Warrior, VITAL, WALRIO.
Vital Warrior.
Vital Warrior. That's in California here.
Warrior.
For those of you listening out of California, you can look that one up, Vital Warrior. I think I've heard of that one too. So we need to get a final thought from you, Jim, and a final thought from Stan. And we really appreciate both of you coming in. And give us your website, Jim. If you have a website, Stan, give us your website. So go ahead, Jim, and give us your website and a final thought.
Okay. Well, we can be reached at healerwarrior.us. Healerwarrior.us. And I guess my final thought is this, and I would be remiss if we didn't also honor Stan's other son, Robert, who was killed in Afghanistan. And Stan and Shirley White have given more than most families will ever be able to give for our country. 2 sons, 3 of their sons have served, and I just want to give my appreciation and thanks to Stan and Shirley for what they're doing to take the trauma and pain of what they've experienced and turn it around to help others. I couldn't be prouder to be on the show with anyone other than Stan, so I applaud you, sir.
Well, thank you. And you can contact me at Harold, HAROLD .White at frontier.com.
At Frontier?
FRONTIER.com. Yes, ma'am. Like
At
Frontier Communications.
Frontier.com.
Frontier.com.
Okay. So for both,
Shirley and I both, she's president of the Gold Star Mothers in West Virginia, and we both work together trying to help veterans and their families. And,
well, we really appreciate what you and Shirley are doing, Stan, with your different organizations and groups to help the vets, because this is all about remembering those who gave all, and they gave their life for our safety, and we want to really do everything we can to save those who have survived. And for those that want to get in touch with Jim, is Healer, HEALER, Warrior, WARRIOR.US. Did I say that right, Jim? And it's Harold, HAROLD .White, WHITE, at Frontier, FRONTIER.com. Did I say that one right, Stan?
Yes, ma'am. IER.com.
Right. Okay, so for our listening audience, we thank all of you for joining in, and we certainly want to give mention to your son, Robert. I wasn't aware of that, but thank you for bringing that to our attention, Jim. Robert and Andrew, so Shirley and Stan, have given 2 sons for our safety, and we certainly appreciate that, because that's giving up an awful lot, 2 sons. So on this Memorial Day, we thank and remember Robert and Andrew, the sons of Shirley and Stan, and we thank Jim for all the work he's doing. Jim Dolan Stan White, we thank you both for coming on and sharing this Memorial Day, May 30th, 2016, with us. Thank you so much. And we'll have you back again, because we are here to help, empower, and help all the people across the world to heal. And what better way to heal than having mental wellness as opposed to mental illness?
That's right. And in the famous words of Edwin Starr, war, what is it good for? Absolutely nothing.
Absolutely. And thank you both again, and happy Memorial Day to everybody. And with
Thanks,
that,
Louise. Thanks, Kennon.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, Stan.
With that being said, as you know, when we leave, your power lies within you. Let it loose. Until next time.